recording. So our session today will be recorded, and I will post the recording on our LibGuide, which I'm going to show you later. And about an hour after we're done here today, right around 4:30, as you're packing up and heading home, you'll get an email from me with a link to the website where you can find all of this information. So you'll get a link, and you will also get a survey evaluation request. Hopefully you will fill that out for me. But we are all here today to talk about programs, how to count them going forward in the annual report, and primarily how to use a spreadsheet tool that I put together that will hopefully make your lives easier as we go along counting these programs. And it's totally up to you whether you use the tool, but you need to know what's going on with the programs. If you have attended or are planning to attend sort of the sister webinar about this, which is about all the changes to the annual report, some of this information is going to be the same. So if you've already been to that webinar, you can relax for the next 20 to 25 minutes, because mostly what I say is going to be a repeat from that past session, but a little reiteration sometimes helps people, a little clarification helps. Sometimes people have different questions, so you may learn something as we go along. Anyway, we're here talking about programs and activities and how to count them for the annual report. I always like to start by explaining and reiterating the difference between the state annual report that you guys send me every single year and the reports that you create in your library for your own purposes. These are two completely different things. The state report is something that I send on to the Institute of Museum and Library Services for inclusion in their public libraries survey. And their PLS is a national picture of what's happening in libraries, both in our 50 states as well as some territories. And in order for that to work, we have a shared set of questions so that every library in every state across the country is providing the same kind of data, showing a snapshot of what's happening in their library. And because it's a national thing and because there's a little bit of bureaucracy, it can take a few years to make changes to the public library survey and those questions. Asterisk, when there's not a pandemic, right? When there's a pandemic, all bets are off, and IMLS actually came through with a lot of new COVID-related questions very quickly last year. That doesn't usually happen because there's a more methodical process that takes 2 to 3 years to sort of propose and tweak and test out new questions. So it does take a while for new things to show up, and kind of as we go along and talk about programs, you know, we're starting them now, but it's going to take a couple years before we actually get really good data. So it takes time. In addition, in our state annual report, each state can add some of their own questions for internal purposes. And we do that in Connecticut. There are a number of questions that are Connecticut specific. They may be similar to questions in other states, but we use that data here in Connecticut for other purposes. And we have some control over those questions. And those are things that I can add that we'll see as we go along. So that's the state annual report. It's really a holistic view of a public library, all of those aspects of circulation, collections, reference, all kinds of money, staffing. We do a lot with that annual report, which is very different from your reports and your data that you're collecting in your library to tell your own story to your stakeholders. And because it's all yours, you can do it however you want, right? Like you can customize that, you can tweak it, you can count things the way you want to for your own purposes. But how you count it may not be the same as how the state counts it. So just be aware that what you report to me should be consistent with what everybody else is reporting as well. But your reports are telling your own story, and I do encourage you to delve deeply into some of those numbers, especially things like reference, one-on-one tech help. Really dig into that and keep those statistics to help tell your funders what's happening in your library. That's really valuable data. So I also want to start with a reminder of what a program is according to IMLS. So when you are working on your state annual report for me, you are talking about programs under this definition, which is a planned event that's introducing the group attending to library services or directly provides information to participants. And you'll notice that as we go along, the definition is really patron focused. It's not about all the library staff time to put something together. It's not time that creates a program, it's the patrons and the intent. So that's it. The program is about the patrons more so. It's a more patron focused definition. So as you're counting your programs, you will want to exclude any activities that are delivered one-to-one rather than in the group. So that's a good factor to keep in mind as you're deciding, is this a program or is it maybe an activity or is it maybe something else altogether? It could be a reference transaction. Book a librarian session sounds like reference to me. Services to homebound, maybe you've got some outreach programs. There are different ways that you can count the things that you're doing that aren't necessarily programs. So these are some examples of things that are not programs. Then as we go forward, make sure you're counting all the programs that your library sponsors or co-sponsors. So I think co-sponsorship is a really interesting developing thing as libraries continue with online programs. There are great opportunities for you to kind of pool your resources and share some costs to get some speakers that you might not have gotten in the past, because now you can just put everybody online and there's no seating capacity. There are fewer logistics when you're able to do something online in that way. So I think co-sponsorship is going to continue to grow. Make sure that you're not counting programs sponsored by other groups that are just using your facilities. Those are not your programs. Those are somebody else's programs. But you get to count those in a separate question called use of your meeting room. So that is something you can count, but in a separate question. And these might be, an example would be like the Girl Scouts who are using your meeting room for a recruitment event. Awesome for them, great event for them, not a program for you, okay? So just draw that distinction as well. And always remember that if you are offering your programs as a series, you get to count each one of those programs as a program. So each week in the series or each night in the series counts as a program. And I think some libraries may have, for instance, an 8-week-long series of story times. That counts as 8 programs. So make sure you're getting all your credit for those. So here are some examples of things that are programs according to the IMLS definition. Story times, always a program, right? It could be happening at the community center, farmers market, beach, or in your library, or on your lawn, in your parking lot. That's a program. Likewise, a presentation about library resources to students is a program. Tech and gaming, summer reading events, those are great programs. Hopping over here to look at the chat, there's a question: if we're working with a partner like SCORE and we're both promoting, does that count as a program? Sounds to me like you are co-sponsoring that program, which does count. And often sponsorship means that you are perhaps helping to pay, perhaps hosting, perhaps helping with logistics, that kind of thing. If you're just kind of hanging a flyer on your bulletin board for somebody else's program and your logo is not on the flyer, that's really you just posting a flyer for somebody else, right? So think about what co-sponsorship means in your library, that you are really contributing to the planning and development and implementation of that program, not just posting a flyer. So yes, go ahead and count that. These are some things that are not programs, those one-on-one activities. Remember, a group thing, probably a program. One-on-one, not a program. Could be an activity, could be a reference transaction, could be an outreach activity, could be a volunteer activity that you're counting instead, but it's not a program. All of these fabulous take and make kits, grab and go kits that you've been doing, those are self-directed activities. And we do have a place in the spreadsheet where you can count those. So you can keep track of them internally for yourselves. And then you're going to be reporting them up to me in the annual report going forward now too. So a self-directed activity is something that people are doing on their own without the interaction with a librarian. Libraries have been doing amazing grab and go kind of stuff. Excellent. Keep counting those, keep tracking those as activities, not as programs. And your library card sign up booth, fabulous outreach, not a program. So those are some examples. These are also in the spreadsheet as well as on my LibGuide. So you'll have those reminders if you need them. All right, so IMLS launched a whole bunch of new questions about programs because they have seen how programs are developing and changing over the past several years. You'll remember that nationwide, circulation's going down, visitation perhaps is going down, many other use stats are going down in public libraries, but programs continue to go up, which is absolutely fabulous. So IMLS, recognizing that, really wanted to delve more deeply into programs and see how what libraries are doing, see the dynamicness of those programs that you're all offering. So that's when they started coming up with all these new program formats. We used to just have program, and last year we had, I think, in-person program and virtual program. And now we're pulling that even apart from 1 to 2 to 4 questions now. So the in-person questions are about whether your program is on-site or off-site. So an on-site program happens on your library premises, on your property. It could be in your building, in your parking lot, on your lawn, on your roof, in your gazebo, but it's on your library property. That's on-site. An off-site program is not on your library property, right? So it might be on the park next door that is not library property. Could be at the beach, could be at the farmer's market on the green. Anywhere that's not your library is off-site. In contrast to virtual, I know that's a place, but virtual programs are now either live or pre-recorded. And the synchronous asynchronous distinction is something we may be familiar with for anybody who's done sort of online classes. There were the synchronous classes where you had to be there every week at the same time to tune in to get the lecture and the course discussion. So that's synchronous and live, right? We're familiar with that concept. Versus asynchronous, when you could just pop in anytime at 2 in the morning to do your coursework if you needed to. So that's how we're really breaking up virtual programs, whether it's something that's live and you have to watch it right then, or whether it's something that has been recorded and you're just watching it on demand whenever you want. So those are our 4 program formats now. You're going to pick one of them and put it in your spreadsheet, and you're going to count your program only once, right? Because you offered one program, you're counting it only once. So that's the way to enter it. And I'm going to hop over to the chat now and take a look at those and answer those. Oops, I see there's a lot. Sorry, I have not been paying attention. So the question is, how should we report programs where there are 2 elements, a take and make portion plus live or recorded story times with a librarian? And what I've been recommending for people there is you can record that as 2 sort of separate things. So you'll have a self-directed activity, which is the take and make component, and you can record the number of participants there, which is basically the number of kits that you gave out. And then you can count the interaction. It sounds to me like it's going to be a virtual program. Could be live, could be pre-recorded. And if it's a live virtual program, you'll be able to count the number of attendees. If it's a recorded program, you'll be able to count the number of times that it's watched. So in that case, you may get 2 different groups of people, right? You might give out 50 kits, but there's only like 24 people who actually show up to the program. So that's how you would track those 2. Another question in the chat. What if you're working with a local group and assisting with technical implementation, such as Zoom technical instance assistance? That sounds like a fabulous kind of reference transaction, or you're helping out their program. It doesn't sound to me like, let's see, assisting with technical, that might be somebody who is using your space. You would count them probably as using your meeting room, but it doesn't sound to me like you are actually sponsoring the program. You're probably just offering them help as the host. So I think I would need a little more clarification on that. Zoom technical assistance. If you're letting them use your Zoom account, that sounds to me like you're co-sponsoring. If they're using their Zoom account, and you're just telling them what to click, that sounds like a reference transaction. So you see how complicated these get. We might have to talk about that offline too. And how would you count a hybrid program where attendees can be on-site or virtual? I'm going to get to that. We can do that now, which is wicked cool. You can do that in the spreadsheet. So hang on to that question. Put a pin in that, they say. We'll talk about that. Bookmobile on-site or off-site? Ooh, fascinating question. So if you did a story time like on your bookmobile, ooh, interesting. I'm going to say let's call that off-site, right? Because your bookmobile, ooh, fascinating. Let's call that offsite because I'm really intrigued by this offsite number. And I think because it's really off the premises, off the like sort of library physical building premises. Let's call it offsite. That's a really great addition. I'm going to add that as a clarification to the FAQs on the webpage. But let's go with offsite for that. Another question, if you have a live music performance and offer it asynchronously afterwards, it can be counted only once. So that's one program because you offered one program, right? You happen to record it. So that's one program. You'll count it as a live performance. And all of these choices, you'll go ahead and pick the in-person option first. So it sounds to me like an in-person on-site kind of concert. You happened to potentially be live streaming it, and then you posted the recording afterward. So that's only one program, but you can count attendance and I think we'll be able to count the live virtual attendance, and we'll be able to count the number of views. So once we get to the spreadsheet, you'll see how that works. Okay, another question in the chat, what happens if we start back to in-person on-site, but still allow patrons to tune in virtually? What should we select? Always defer to the in-person one first. That it's if you've got any people who are there in person, who are actually in your space with you kind of face to face, go ahead and defer to that as your program format. And then you'll still be counting attendance, whether they're in person or online. Another question in the chat. So we need to look at every program offered since last July and figure out what kind of program it was. Sounds like, yep, you do. Yep, you do need to do that. And also going forward, yes. So the program spreadsheet will help you do that. And I'm gonna pull up, we'll get to that in a minute. Okay. So as before, you'll always be picking an audience age. We used to have children just ages 0 to 11, and IMLS is broken down now to 2 separate ages. The young ones, 0 to 5, which is really kind of an early literacy, pre-literacy age, and then ages 6 to 11. If you can grab those numbers starting now going forward, that's the way to do it. I know a lot of libraries have not necessarily been breaking those down by those age groups. So in this year's annual report, we're lumping them all together, ages 0 to 11. So cumulative numbers for this year's annual report, but start breaking them up in your counts going forward. IMLS also clarified that the teen ages are 12 to 18 and that adults are ages 19 and up. An adult program might be something like retirement planning, or might be long-term care insurance. You know, that's clearly an adult program that teens and children will not be interested in attending, versus a general interest program, which is also intergenerational or family or all ages, which might be a PG movie that a whole family comes to. That's a fun kind of general interest program. Or chess club, right? Like everybody comes to chess club, all ages. That would be a general interest program. And that's always the age of the primary intended audience. So as you've been doing in the past, anytime you have a story time, that's probably children ages 0 to 5. You're counting all the parents and the caregivers in terms of your audience attendance. All right. This is probably pretty similar how you count attendance. In person, you're counting them as usual, right? You're counting heads or you're counting faces, however you count them, that's your attendance, the way you used to be counting them in the olden days when we had people together. For live virtual programs, count the number of unique viewers or live viewers. So while the program is live, That's the attendance. And this can be interesting to find on different platforms. And my fellow state data coordinator colleagues have put together an online resource that we can take a look at that will help guide you through each platform, whether it's Facebook, YouTube, Zoom, or whichever, as to where to go to find those metrics and those statistics. So there is guidance available to you for how to find those live virtual counts. So hang on, we're getting there. When you're looking at pre-recorded programs, you're not going to be reporting attendance because people didn't really attend, but you're going to report this thing called views, which is the number of times somebody watched the recording. Okay, let me hop back over to the chat and take a look. A question: how about if a program covers more than one age group, such as summer reading kickoff for all kids? You do have to pick. You got to pick one. It's one program, so one age group. And probably if they're reading, it's probably going to be ages 6 to 11, but pick more of the primary age group for who it's really intended for. I've seen libraries really starting to pitch a teen program versus a kids program for summer reading. So pick whichever age group is most appropriate for their content. And another question: you've been counting ages 0 to 2, 3 to 5, 6 to 2. So you can now put the first two groups together. For the purposes of the annual report, yes, you would put those first two groups together. But if you want, you can keep counting 0 to 2 and 3 to 5. That is totally up to you. If you find those numbers to be useful for you, go ahead and keep counting them. Keep doing that distinction and that breakdown. So remember the annual report in the past, we only asked for 0 to 11. So now we are asking for a distinction 0 to 5 and 6 to 11. So those are the ages there. Another question: so there is no category for intergenerational. Intergenerational, let's backtrack. Intergenerational is now known as general interest. That's the catch-all age group. So that's what you're going to do if it's an all interest intergenerational one. Okay, question: recording the views. How are you determining if one library is putting the correct information and another isn't? For example, library A puts a general view, where library B knows how to put the unique views, which are sometimes significantly less. It seems like the report would be off. That's why I strongly recommend you use the guidance prepared by my fellow state data coordinators for each different platform to tell you where to find those metrics going forward, so that you will be counting the same thing at each library. Otherwise, as in every single question, every single case with the annual report, I have to depend on all of you to read and understand the definitions in the questions and to be counting things accurately and reporting them accurately to me. I rely on you guys to send me accurate data. So it's really you guys who need to be aware, as you are today, right? You're here, you're learning, you're asking these questions, which I love. You guys are learning, and we're trying to get everybody on the same page. So that's why I love to do these information sessions, is so that everybody can have a common understanding of what these terms are and how to get there and how to count them, so that we are getting more towards an apples and apples comparison across the state. All right, fabulous. So here's how we're talking about views of those pre-recorded programs. Remember, these are on demand, things people can watch at any point. A little reminder: this is the number of times people are playing it and watching it, not the number of times somebody saw your social media post about the video, right? So if you say, but 8 people liked my post about my YouTube video, that is awesome. That is way more likes than I ever get myself. I love it. But it's not the number of times somebody actually watched or viewed the recording. You're going to head over to YouTube to get those numbers instead. Now, this third bullet point is a big change that came from IMLS this year. Going forward, right? So starting July 1st, count the number of views after 7 days, or if you take that recording down sooner, count it when you take your recording down, but not as of the end of the fiscal year. So the data that you're going to send me in this year's annual report, you've probably been counting the views after a month or after the end of the fiscal year. That is totally okay. Do not backtrack for the past 11 months and try to recalculate all of your program views, okay? Don't worry about that. Send me the numbers you have. Again, IMLS knows that it takes a few years by the time a new question comes on before the data is actually a little more accurate, before we've learned what it all means, and we can do those comparisons statewide and nationwide. So they're aware that the data is going to be wonky in the first few years. So send me the views that you've got in your annual report, but going forward, count after 7 days. And that fabulous spreadsheet from my state data coordinators is going to guide you on how to do that. And remember, if you put a video on multiple social media accounts, multiple platforms, count all your views. So there's a link to the magic Google Sheet. This link is also on the program site, so you don't have to find it. It is also in the spreadsheet itself, so you can find it whenever you need to. There's that reminder in writing there, so you can go back and tell your boss. Maria said, if you've been counting the number of views as of the end of the month or the end of the reporting year, include those numbers in your annual report, okay? Don't get stressed. Just going forward, count the number of views as of 7 days. All right, let me hop over here to questions. Carol, your question, where can we find those guidance for the metrics? It's going to be that link right there, which I am going to point out to you later on. Give me some time. We're only halfway through. We're going to take a look at that in just a minute. The next question, is there talk of having IMLS change bullet point number 3 and change it from 7 days to 30 in case something goes viral? No, there's no talk about that. IMLS did, I mean, no matter what time frame you pick, it's going to be tricky both to remember to go in there and check, but just to capture that data, right? Is it 7? Is it 14? Is it 30? And I think they settled on the 7 days because it was a metric that may already exist in some of the most popular platforms. Like there's a 7-day count. So they picked 7 days. That's what we're going to go with because that is what we're getting from the IMLS. Like I can't change it. If we change it, it's going to take a couple years. But for the time being, we're going with 7 days. So you will count the number of views only after it is posted for 7 days, even if it stays up for the whole month. That is correct. So if I posted on June 1st, on June 7th or 8th, or whatever is a week later, the 8th, I'm going to go in and capture those views. So this is something you may want to build into your workflow. Maybe every Monday morning, if you're posting programs, you plan on going in the next week and counting the number of views and just capturing that number of views. But it is, you're going to count them after 7 days. You can leave that program up as long as you want. You could leave it up for now until eternity, and people may still watch it. But I think the greatest number of views happens after the first 7 days. Next question, 30 is more reasonable and will end of fiscal year is not, and it is understandable that they won't want that. Fabulous. I'm glad I could clarify for you. Excellent. So this is what the a sample of the program questions will look like on the annual report. So this is a little snapshot. These are just the teen programs. They're grouped together by age because I think that's going to be easier for you guys to fill in, where maybe the children's librarian can provide info for the children's questions. Teen librarian is filling in these teen questions, and then there's adult questions from adult services, and then there's sort of that intergenerational one, but they're grouped by age. This here on the left is a new column this year, just to try to indicate where the question comes from. So there are 3 options here. US is a federal IMLS question. This is a nationwide question. Anything with the US is a question that every library in the country, every public library, is answering in their own version of the annual report. So those are the big comparable ones. And then this F is all I could come up with as a feeder question, right? So it kind of feeds into one of the national questions. Like if I want to get this big national question, I have to ask some of these other questions so I can add up the data, partly for IMLS, but partly so I can continue to give you guys the stats and the reports that you have found to be so helpful, just in terms of documenting what's happening at your library. So I know this is a lot of slicing and dicing of data, but it can pull together to some really interesting reports, I think, in the future. In this column, you'll also see CT, which stands for Connecticut, go figure. And those are the Connecticut specific questions, which we will see a little bit later on. But you can see here, it's just going to be in the same order: number of in-person on-site programs, in-person off-site programs, number of live virtual programs. This right here is going to be an automatic formula that the spreadsheet totals up for you, so that I'm going to feed to IMLS. Then next right here, you're going to have your number of pre-recorded programs. And then we're going to get into the attendance questions, right? So attendance at on-site programs, attendance at off-site programs, attendance at virtual programs that are live, this automatic formula to put them all together. And then here's your views of pre-recorded programs right down here. So it kind of pulls it all together by age. Okay, let's move on to self-directed activities, which is a Connecticut specific thing. And many other states are adding these questions to their annual reports as well, but this is not data that IMLS is currently collecting. They may collect it in the future, in which case we will be ahead of the game and totally ready to do this. But right now we're collecting it in Connecticut for our own reports. And because if I collect it from you guys, then I can give it back to you on those really nifty fact flyers that we have, and put it into the statistical reports to really show a picture of all of the work that you were doing during the pandemic year. I think activities have been really dynamic. So here's a definition right at the bottom of what's an activity in comparison to a program. But the activity is provided by staff for patrons, and usually it's occasional and there's no expectation of staff interaction while the activity is being completed, right? The take and make kids are taking them home and doing them on the kitchen table without the staff being there, right? There is no expectation that a librarian is going to come home with you and help you with the craft. You're on your own. And some of these actually happen in the library back in the olden days when we had people there, right? You'd have like a craft out on the table in the children's room. Parents could just drop it and do it whenever they wanted to. They didn't expect you to help them. It was just kind of a fun thing that they could do with the kids. So that's another example of a self-directed activity. Here's what those questions are going to look like on the annual report. These are all just kind of grouped together as activities. They go in order sequentially by age, increasing age. Here on the left column, you'll see these are all Connecticut questions. So these are specific to Connecticut. These were special. And this thing right here where I put new in 2021, we saw that here. I tried to make these notes in the annual report if it's a question that has been edited or changed from a previous year. The terminology may be a little different. There's new questions in here. This question about views used to be in a slightly different place in the form, and it's moved to a new location in the form. So these little notes will kind of draw your eye to the questions. So you'll recognize, oh, this is a new question. I don't have any numbers for how I did this last year because I didn't do this last year, right? So it's a new thing that you're going to be counting. We're going to hop back. So all of these self-directed activities questions are new. You're going to count the number of activities and then the number of participants. So those will all get reported there. All right, we're hopping ahead. Okay, finally we get to the spreadsheet. Phew. The spreadsheet is really to help you out because we've gotten it's kind of a mandate from IMLS, right? You will ask these questions about programs. Okay, well, thank you very much, sir. But they didn't give us any kind of assistance in how you would collect that data. So I put together a spreadsheet that you can use just for your own purposes in tracking these numbers. I'm hoping it will make your lives easier. If you hate it, don't use it, but use the concepts so that you are collecting the same kind of numbers because you'll need to put them into your annual report. This version of the spreadsheet does include information about the summer reading report. So I talked to Kim Poe, we collaborated on questions and came to agreement about what the questions are. So if you are tracking programs in the spreadsheet, you should be able to answer both your summer reading report questions as well as your annual report form to me. And once we hop over to that Excel spreadsheet, you'll see that there are some options in there. If you want to like print out a version and handwrite your questions, you can absolutely do that. I know some libraries like that option where you've just got it on a clipboard and you're keeping track of head counts as you go along. Fabulous. You can do that and count them up at the end of the month. But what I strongly recommend is that you use the Excel form itself and type things into the spreadsheet so it's doing the math for you as we go along. All right, before we head over to the website and the spreadsheet, I'm going to check the questions here. Our question is, what if we have a teen volunteer help patrons at the craft table? Is that a program or self-directed? That is still a self-directed activity, remember, because there's not a group attending, it's really a one-on-one activity. So that's going to be a self-directed activity. Helpful language explaining the question, great, about new edits that are moved. I'm glad. Honestly, if you guys think of improvements for the annual report, please send them to me. At any point, if you're going through there and you're like, holy crap, this is confusing, or oh my gosh, if Maria just did this, it would be so much easier, please let me know, because many of those improvements come from you guys. The annual report now has 2 years worth of data from past years, and that's an improvement based on a library director's suggestion. So please let me know if there's anything that I can change to those in terms of functionality and how they look, not in terms of questions that I can't always change. You'll see that. All right, in the chat, is there a way to count teen volunteer participation? They will help with programs, grab and go crafts, shelf reading examples. Totally. You should totally be counting any volunteers you have, right? Like document the heck out of your volunteers, which is great. And you'll put volunteer hours in your annual report, but those are not programs, right? So volunteer hours and volunteer activities are fabulous and they make libraries run, but they're not programs. So make sure you're counting them that way. Okay, I'm gonna hop out of this little guy and we're gonna hop over here to this website. So when we talk about our LibGuides, it's this kind of concept. Here's the URL. This link is going to be coming to you at 4:30 in an email, so you don't have to write it down. If you are ever stuck for where to find statistics, you're going to come to services up there. You're going to pull down to library statistics. That's going to get you to the statistical profile page here. And then you're going to look at the annual report, which is where all this gold stuff is. Once I get the 21 report form available, it's going to be here in this tab, mid-July. This tab right here changes to the 21 report, is very useful. Lists all the questions that are new and different this year. But what we're looking at today is this programs tab. So here's where you're going to find the magic spreadsheet, which I will show you in a sec. This is version 2 of the spreadsheet, and I updated it on the 26th. If you happened to use version 1 or you downloaded version 2 prior to May 26th, please download the new version because it's got a lot more functionality and it will allow you to sort things better. So if you were using version 1, you'll notice that there are a lot more formulas built into version 2, and you'll notice there's an additional column now where we're separating the in-person attendance from the live virtual attendance. So that's going to take a little care as you're copying and pasting from the old version into the new, but it's going to make more sense just in terms of the way the formulas work. So our slides for our session today are right here. You can take another look at these, print them off if you want to. I'm going to put our recording right here. This register is going to turn into recording. That's where our recording will be. And then as you scroll down here, all of this information again that was in the slides, what's attendance, what's views, this handy guide right here. This is the spreadsheet that my fellow state data coordinators put together. So say, for instance, you had a live program on Zoom and you then post a recording via Zoom. You'll want to take a look at the video conferencing tab right down here. And you'll say Zoom, here's a little description. So if you need help figuring out where to find numbers in Zoom for how many people attended live, here's your guidance. And then if you posted a Zoom cloud recording, here's information on how you'll find the number of people who watched your recording. So this information is right here. Let's hop back to the README tab right down here. I suspect a lot of us are posting on YouTube or Facebook. I know we post a lot of videos on YouTube, so let's check the video sharing tab. I don't necessarily do a lot of live YouTube, but a lot of people do where they're streaming live on YouTube. Here's how you find the number of people who were there live. And then as we scroll over, here's how you're going to find the number of people who watched your recording within 7 days. So here's how you find views for the first 7 days. This spreadsheet is fabulous. So again, there are links to it here. There's a link here in the slides. There's a link in the spreadsheet. There's links to it in multiple places so you can find it. Right here are these examples again of what's a program, great programs, and then examples here of self-directed activities. So those are good things to look at. The FAQs, these are helpful. A lot of these are in the spreadsheet as well. And then definitions of what's a program and what's an activity. I lost my chats. Come back, chat. All right, let me see if there's questions here. Excellent, excellent, excellent. Good, good. Okay, thank you for your positive comments. I now actually want to show you the spreadsheet. Crikey, huh? My goodness. So this is downloaded. Whoop. Let me send that to another. Close that window. Okay, so when we download the spreadsheet, here's what it looks like. You're going to start with the definitions, and this is all the same information that was on the LibGuide. So it's here again, right in the spreadsheet for your reference. This annual totals page will come up with totals to use in the annual report and your summer reading report that you submit to Kim this fall. The totals will calculate automatically as you enter your programs on the next tab. So if you try to mess with this sheet, it's not going to let you, right? It's going to tell you you're in a protected sheet. I did that on purpose, right? I don't want you messing with the formulas, because if you delete the formula, it's wicked hard to replace, right? There's the formula. You don't want to try and reconfigure that one, I can assure you. So these are all grouped by ages again. Oops, sorry. The kids are up here. The first 3 questions are always about summer reading program. I apologize, my version 3 is going to spell out what SRP is. In my head, I think of summer reading program as SRP, not knowing that everybody else in the world does not use the same acronym for summer reading. So SRP means your summer reading program. And speaking of version 3, if you think of other ideas you'd like to see in version 3, let me know. We can make improvements to this. But these first 3 questions are always about the summer reading program, and these totals are what you're going to include in your summer reading report. Then as we go down, these next questions are about number of programs, and then the next set of questions is about attendance and views. So these are numbers that you will be able to put into your annual report form. And going down, broken up again by ages, there's the teens, here's the adults. Here's the intergenerational, other, general, however you want to call it. Here's some additional sums sort of as a check. So as you are doing your annual report, these theoretically will match up. And then here are all these self-directed activities. So this is called annual totals. And I have to apologize, that's going to be another change in version 3, is they're not really annual totals. These are really just totals of whatever you put in this sheet, track and spreadsheet, right? So if you've got 3 months worth of stuff in this part of the spreadsheet, it's going to show up in the annual totals. So it's not really annual, it's just sort of a cumulative thing, what you've got. So how you use this spreadsheet is really up to you in terms of the dates. Maybe you want to keep a different spreadsheet for each state report fiscal year, reporting year. So maybe you want to keep each sheet from July 1st to June 30, start a new copy of this as of July 1st to the next June 30. You can keep it running for 5 years, totally up to you. Well, however you want to do it, however you want to manage it is up to you. But you'll see as we go forward, you can just type right in here. We're going to call this story time. And it happened the other day. Oh, poo on you. Don't give me that. Why are you not letting me? Oh, what did I push? Magic spreadsheet is not being so magic to me. Come on. All right, my apologies. All of a sudden it hates me. I'm going to try downloading it one more time here, because it actually is very cool when it's not acting up. Really appreciate it. Okay. There we go. All right, so let's try again. And you can spell story time correctly because you are a librarian. Oh my heavens. We're going to say this is not yet a summer reading program. I'm going to pick from the format here. We're still doing these in person, on site on the lawn. So I'm going to call that on site. My target age for this story time is ages 0 to 5. We happen to have 24 kids and caregivers in attendance, which I'm going to enter in the in-person programs column. We did not live stream this, so I have no live virtual program attendance, nor did I record it, so I'm not going to have any pre-recorded attendance. And it's not a self-directed activity, so I don't have any participants. But let's say I did a grab and go kit, and that happened on the next day. This is still not summer reading. This was a self-directed activity for ages 6 to 11. Didn't have any attendance because it's a self-directed activity. We're going to count participants. We made 60 kits and we gave them all away. It was a hot commodity. So that's the 60 kits. So that's how you type it in. It's really straightforward and simple. You keep it however you want. If you want, I know some libraries may have a shared server. You could keep one copy on the server that everybody's adding to. You could upload this to Google Sheets and have everybody access it there. If you upload it to Google Sheets, be aware that the protection will not go with it. Excuse me. So if you upload it, all the protections on this page will disappear and you can potentially delete things. So be very careful, and you might want to reprotect it once you go into Google Sheets. That's an option. Maybe you want to keep a copy in the kids' room, one at the teen desk, and one at the adult services desk, and you combine all your numbers at the end of the month and at the end of the year. How you use this is up to you. Likewise, in this version, track and spreadsheet, if you want to add some columns, you can do that. Maybe you want to call, I don't know what extra columns you would put in there, but you could add columns if you want to. You can make them different colors if you want to. You can actually change the formatting in this particular sheet and make it more custom for you if you would like to do that. In contrast, this one, tally by hand on printout, this is really just formatted so that you can print it onto one sheet. I think you're going to need some tiny little handwriting to fill it in, but this way you could get it all on one sheet at least. So if you wanted to keep it on a clipboard or something like that, you would have the option to do so. But of course, you have to do all the math yourself with a calculator. So I recommend the track in spreadsheet version here. And let me hop over and take a look at the chat while I also grab another. I want to show you this version of the spreadsheet with some data filled in. So we're going to take a look at that next after I take a look at the chat. Okay, good. Nice comments. Thank you so much. What happens when your take and make has a tutorial video with it? Would it still be self-directed? Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the concept we talked about earlier. You would have the take and make activity. If there's a pre-recorded video, you could list that as a separate line here. And after 7 days of posting it, you could count the number of times it was viewed. You could do that. But that is a self-directed activity. All right, a question. If a program is during the time our summer reading program is running, it is considered a summer reading program. you guys figure out, nah, I ain't getting into that. You determine what's a summer reading program at your library. If something happens between June 1st and August 31st, and it happens to be in the summer, it may or may not be as part of your summer reading program. Your library needs to figure out for yourselves, what is a summer reading program event or activity? What's related to Tales and Tales themes this year? Or is it just a movie that you happen to be putting on and it happens to be July? So you need to be thinking at your library of what does it mean to be a summer reading program and what's just something that coincidentally happens in the summer. Okay, and once it's no longer summer reading, yep, you got to figure that out, whether it's just a program or whether it's summer reading. So you're going to figure that out. So let's take a look at this sheet, which is filled in with a whole bunch of data that I just made up and stuck in there. So just for giggles, let's look at the ones that are summer reading program. And I mean, maybe it was a take and make. There could be take and makes that are summer reading related. There could potentially be a movie screening that was Tales and Tales related that we wanted to count as a summer reading event. Maybe we said our toddler story times are specifically summer reading program oriented, so we're going to count those. Maybe we said these concerts, the jam concert at the beach and the folk songs on the lawn, those are specifically summer reading programs. So we have decided that. In contrast to, do I have other things? There may be other things that happen here in the summer. Yeah, see, we've got D&D Club that just keeps going and going and going. It's not a summer reading program. It's just a program that we keep going throughout the year. So I didn't count that as part of our summer reading program. But here's all that data in here. And because it's got these filters, you can sort it however you want, right? You can sort every single column in a different way. Let's say we want these chronologically. Let's say we want them by ages. We can certainly do that. We only want the ages 0 to 5, and we'll sort, and they're sorted chronologically. So that's one way to look at it. What I might imagine you would do with this, let me clear all of these filters and start fresh. What I imagine you might do with this is use the filters to come up with sort of monthly numbers, because I know you are also regularly reporting numbers to your stakeholders on a monthly basis about number of programs and attendance, right? So you need to be able to figure out how many people did we get in here for these programs each month. What I suggest, until I build version 3, is that you use the filters to get that data. So there are a couple options. You can either use these date filters here, and you could say between June, July, January, oh my gosh, January 1st and January 31st, you could get a month's worth of data. Come back. Where did you all go? Oh, all right, clear. Why is it being weird with me today? In theory, that would work. Date filters between January 1st and January 31st. Let's try that again. There we go. So all the programs that we offered in this January, you would be able to either sort them by age, so you can get them all together, or you can just select a specific age. And now you're seeing great. So we did, if you select all of them, you can make spreadsheets tell you things. That you did 4 programs, okay, for ages 12 to 18. I'm going to select these numbers, and Excel will tell me that adds up to 32. So we did 4 programs for teens, and we had a total attendance at those 4 programs of 32 kids. So I think that's probably how you would use it for your monthly reports. Another option here is to just say, show me March 2021. It'll do that. That month, coincidentally, all the data I have in here is teen programs. So let's try instead, maybe we want to look at a quarter. And I want to do January, February, first quarter of 2021. Great, here's all these programs. I can see that is 11 programs. Oh, I know why, dummy. Let's clear that filter. There we go. We did a lot more programs this quarter. That's the magic of Excel, right? We did 20 programs this quarter. Let me see how much attendance we had. Oh, I know, I wanted to show you guys that other thing. We had 251 people in attendance at our live virtual programs because it was winter and we hadn't gotten people together. And then in terms of participants in our self-directed activities, we had 180 participants. Let me clear all those filters and show you how you would enter something like here, the folk songs on the lawn, okay? This is an in-person on-site program on your library lawn, and you had people who were there on their blankets with the family, hanging out. You had 55 people, you went around and counted heads. You knew there were 55 people in attendance at your in-person program. You also had a camera and you were live streaming that particular program for people who weren't able to attend. You checked that Google Docs spreadsheet and you figured out how to count the number of live attendance, and you entered that for the people who watched the live stream version. Then because you had the camera, you saved the recording and you posted that recording online. And you checked after a while, after 7 days, using the spreadsheet to figure out how to do that. And you saw that the recording had been viewed 34 times. Fabulous. That's awesome. So this is how you would count something that happens sort of in multiple ways, right? It's only one program, right? You hired that guy to come once. He came for an hour and a half and it was one program, but you can count the people who were there in person as well as the people who watched it online, and then the people who watched it afterward on demand. And you'll see your summer reading program count actually goes up to 131. And if we look at the annual totals, here's where the magic happens, right? These are all calculating automatically. All right, I'm gonna hop over to the chat because we're running short on time. My apologies. Let's see the questions. So you look at your stats monthly. Can you run your own Excel reports for the protected spreadsheet? Give it a shot, see what happens. I'm not sure. I don't know if you can add a sheet to this. You might be able to add a sheet, add your own sheet and run additional formulas against the track and spreadsheet data. If you figure out how to do this monthly, please let me know, Deb, because I need all the input I can get on that. But if you can probably also export the data and figure it out. I think there's probably some nifty like pivot table thing that would do exactly what I want if I could figure it out. I just need some time to play with it for version 3, but that's my goal. That's my dream for version 3, is for you to be able to pick like a month and for these numbers to just kind of come up for you, and for you to be able to pick a year and have the yearly totals come up for you. So that's the option. All right. I've taken up an entire hour of your time. I think I have answered all the questions. If you have lingering questions, please drop them into the chat, or you can find me by email. Everyone, do I have a timeline for when version 3 of the spreadsheet will be published? No. Maybe when I'm done with some ARPA grants, and maybe when I'm done with getting out the state annual report, and if life ever slowed down, who knows? If there's a rainy day or a tornado and I get to work from home, it could happen. So no timeline at this point. Version 2 just came out like 2 weeks ago, so I encourage you to use version 2. That's going to be the best one working forward. Or play with it yourselves and send me your own improvements. I would love to hear from you. Okay, so I dropped my email in the chat. Let me know if you have questions going forward. I'm going to send you an email in an hour. And I think we are all done. Thank you very much. I greatly appreciate everybody's time in being here. I'm going to go ahead and stop our recording, and I will see you again